Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Dunkerque B. This is going to be your Black Friday event pass or battle pass reward. Right at the end, this ship will be available on the premium line. So you got to spend 2,500 doubloons once you get to the end to actually get this ship. And it's actually a very fun tier 6 battleship. I don't know if it's good or not, but I had a lot of fun playing it for this video. It's got the layout of Richelieu and Jean Bart, but it certainly does not play like those ships at all. Crucially, the armor is quite bad here at tier 6. We often find ourselves in a situation where 380mm guns can overmatch us, and the ship is no different. You're going to notice throughout this video, we take a lot of overmatch damage, where ships like Richelieu and Jean Bart don't face a lot of 32mm overmatch. Dunkerque sees much more overmatch through its armor than the Richelieu and Jean Bart do. So I want you to realize that it is going to feel a little bit worse as a bow tanker. But for its tier, it is very quick, and these guns have a very nice reload. The dispersion leaves a little bit to be desired, 1.7 Sigma on Battleship dispersion, but we do get some good salvos anyway. But the speed here combined with a very nice turning circle radius means we're relatively maneuverable. It's rather comfortable to play, I would say. And this bow on roll, much like I found with Jean Bart, it's very chill, relaxing, pretty easy to play, I would say. You just point your bow towards the enemies and turn your guns to whatever's broadside. And hopefully get the opportunity to push as well. The ship wants to play at a little bit closer ranges, assuming, again, you're not dealing with that overmatch. And I think this is a worthy ship to pick up, honestly. For 2,500 doubloons, it would be almost a no-brainer. The only problem being, it's not only 2,500 doubloons to get a Dunkerque B. You have to finish the battle pass. That's crucial here. I would recommend waiting until you get to the end of the battle pass and then buying it. If you buy it early, of course, there's no guarantee you make it to the end of that battle pass. We'll talk about this when it comes to dockyard ships as well. There's an argument to be made for the discount of the required dockyard progress points or the phases that you need to get through. There's a discount at the beginning, so I can understand wanting to do that early. I still recommend people to not wait until you know you're going to get the ship and then decide if it's worth it or not. And for the battle pass, I don't really see much reason in buying into this until you know you're at the end and you can get this ship. Otherwise, it's kind of just wasted doubloons if your goal was to get the Dunkerque. It's very fun, though. Omaha here is, well, we know what Omahas do, right? They tend to just explode. I shoot a little early here, let's be honest, and probably should have waited for him to turn broadside. I wasn't thinking he would, actually, so my bad there. But overmatch, we should be able to do some good work to him. The dispersion can be shotgun-like, so don't expect this ship to be all that consistent. It's a bit of a funny meme ship, and I tried a bunch of different builds. We're starting off with a more standard battleship build, concealment, fire prevention, extra heal, adrenaline rush, the usual suspects, I would say. But I tried secondaries, I had to give it a go, as well as a full reload DPM build, Furious, and close quarters combat. I had a lot of fun with that. And of course, when the Omaha is angled, we do get ourselves a nice salvo into him. Texas flat broadside onto us at closer ranges. Well, this dispersion's not as much of a downside. 17,000 damage. You'll love to see it. Now in Arizona to deal with, and we'll just point bow on. If the enemy ships don't have 380mm guns or above, you're a very excellent bow tank. Sure, there's going to be some HE spam that can full pan you, and you got to watch out for that. But against a ship like Arizona, we shouldn't be taking too much damage. Really, it's the superstructure he's going after. Something you're going to notice throughout the duration of this video is that I don't shoot a lot of HE. And I think that's a mistake. I really value AP damage. I'm someone who loves dev strikes, those black ribbons. And I probably shoot too much AP, certainly with the Dunkerque and probably with some other ships as well. The HE is very valuable in this game. And with this ship, it does have relatively good damage, and especially its fire chance is actually quite good. 35% fire chance. Given the reload we have here, you're going to light a lot of fires. The other thing is at lower tiers, the ships that you're facing have less inherent fire reduction. So depending on the tier of ship you're at, it's just going to cut fire chance down by a certain percentage. At tier 10, I think it's around 50%. And as you go down in the tiers, it reduces. So this 35% is much more than 35% would be at higher tier. It's going to give you much more fires. We're going to try and cap this, though. Typically, we're going to get reset, though, by the Arizona. Even with Arizona's incredibly slow reload, we're still going to get reset. But if he goes behind the island, we should be fine. Cyclone coming in means more close-range action. And Dunkirk does relatively well at those closer ranges, but that overmatch, again, torpedoes too are going to be a problem, but the ship can dance around a little bit thanks to that very, very nice turning circle radius. I believe it's 700 meters, 730 meter turning circle radius. Pretty good for a battleship. Maybe not as much looking at all of the tier 6s. It's pretty standard. I'm so used to higher tier, I guess, but it felt relatively nimble to me. Yes, turrets incapacitated. Yeah, you're going to have to watch out for that here too, much like the Jean Bart and the Richelieu. If you point bow in, Battleship AP will knock these turrets out. You do have to be a little bit careful of that. Should really just be shooting the HE here, let's be honest. But already up to 94,000 damage, feels pretty good. Now, you may have noticed something a little different about the Dunkirk here relative to a lot of the French battleships, at least the higher tier ones that this hull appears to be in line with. No engine boost and no reload booster. A lot of the premium French battleships will see either an engine boost or a reload booster, sometimes both. Dunkirk doesn't have either one. And that's because this ship was released before the French battleship line was finalized and in the game. Certainly much before some of the other premiums as well. This is a very early ship in the game, so doesn't have some of the goodies that other French battleships would have. So it would be nice, of course, to have a reload booster. We got to look at the Tier 7 Strasbourg, I believe, is basically a Dunkirk with a reload booster. Better accuracy as well, but that reload booster is like a 300-second cooldown. It's kind of ridiculous compared to Huga at that tier, but that's a topic for another video. Dunkirk, though, you just gotta know, you're not getting those very fun, nice consumables, the reload booster or that engine boost. It would be very fun if it did have that, but probably Wargaming would have to nerf down something else about this ship if you gave it all those tools. Maybe even dispersion, making the dispersion even worse, 1.6, 1.5 Sigma, which, you know, I'm not as big a fan of. We're doing a good job of bow taking here, but yeah, the HE is just the way to go here. Honestly, you should be waiting for people to damage control as well, waiting for those little flashing lights to disappear on the enemy ships, and that's going to be a great way to guarantee damage in with this high explosive, because you're bound to light fires. Notice he damage controls, and the little lights on his ship that we can see flashing, that is his immunity time. And on American battleships, it's 20 seconds base, so gotta wait a little bit. And our reload is getting to be so good now that I have to wait just a little bit longer than firing right away, I believe. Oh no, not quite, not quite. Our reload's not quite that good. I did see some 18-second reloads with one of the builds later on, though. And we get the double fires, so Arizona is going to go down 117,000 damage in this one. It's a good ship, man. It just does not consistently punish broadsides. You got to go into it assuming it's just going to troll you all the time and be happily surprised by some of those good salvos. Now, facing a Rook and a Mayoko, yeah, this is not going to go particularly well. I had forgotten that Rook actually has the 380s, so yeah, that's what happens when you face 380mm guns. We're going to wait for broadsides. Whoever goes broadside, that's who we're going to fire at, since we do have smaller caliber guns. I probably should have mentioned that earlier, but you do only get 330mm guns, so your overmatch is not quite as good. The AP gets through 23mm of armor, which isn't going to overmatch a whole lot. No citadels on the Rook. What's going on there? Maybe we could try again. Oh my goodness, that overmatch. If you didn't know, Rook actually does not have a citadel. I had forgotten this, or I didn't really remember this from playing through that line when it released. I remembered the tier 8 getting smashed, and so considering that typically Wargaming makes lines relatively consistent playstyle-wise all the way through, I was a little upset, let's just say, or confused why I wasn't getting any citadels. But yeah, Rook, no citadel to be found. I wish Wargaming wouldn't do that quite so much. We do end up losing this one. I do think we could have pulled out a victory if I hadn't just overpushed there at the end. I assumed we were winning and I just wanted more action. I tend to do that a lot, and I probably threw this game a little bit. Decent credits though. Nearly 1 million credits for a tier 6 on a loss. That's not bad. Blue boosters, premium account, of course. Those disclaimers. But still, decent credit income. There's that Rook Citadel afterwards. I had to go check. And then here's the Hawk at one tier higher. What is that, man? Personally, I would prefer a little bit more consistency out of Citadels. Now on to our next game. Two brothers. We got to push middle, right? Well, here's an example of what happens if you push middle and there's a carrier. Dunkirk doesn't have the best AA. I should be dodging here. I just wanted to show, or at least see, how much the Serov would do to us if I did not maneuver, because stuck bow in, lower speed in the channel, we're not going to be able to maneuver very easily to dodge the incoming strikes. So yeah, we abort that that push. I still had an okay game, but it was much less interesting, let's say. Moving on, let's talk about a secondary build. This is not really all that good, I would say, yet the secondaries do have the third, fourth best hitting DPM at its tier. So they can do okay damage. The problem is going to be your firing angles on those secondaries. To get, well, 3 of the turrets, there's actually only 5 turrets on the ship, but 3 of the turrets firing forward, you got to show a 43-degree broadside. 10 degrees reverse, though, or when we're kiting. So not too bad when you're kiting away. But yeah, the DPM drops off if you're bow tanking, so it's not as good. With IFHE, like I'm running here, you actually get to 27 millimeters of pen, more than enough to full pen battleships at your tier, most of them. It's that overmatch problem, but hey, with secondaries, it's going to help us out here. They just don't do enough damage, and you're compromising a lot on your build. But we're going to have some fun here with it anyway. And we're getting that close quarters reload buff to our main guns as well. Being a little bit greedy, of course, but I wouldn't recommend this one. The build at the end, I think, where we're full sending the damage buffs on our main guns, that's the fun one, I think. Typically at tier 6, you're not actually going to run into that many people with high tier commanders. Most people will barely be getting a tier, like a 10th point on their commander build, so coming down to tier 6 with your 21-point commander, even a 19, 18-point commander, you got a pretty big advantage. You got a lot of extra skills you can run without feeling like you're throwing away a massive advantage or taking a too bad of a troll build, since other people in the game just will not have the number of skill points. That's why it's a bit Seal Clubby to go down to these lower tiers as a more experienced player with higher tier commanders, but I don't think it's too bad of an issue unless you're just like full sending triple divs and like things like Kamikaze R or Kamikaze, remember those things? Dunkirk isn't quite good enough to be considered still clubbing, I don't think, in my opinion, but it is pretty fun to go down with some of these crazy builds that honestly don't work all that well at high tier and make them work here. Full sending into a war spite, very tricky ship to deal with, again, that overmatch. I'm trying to bait him into shooting our belt armor, much like we were talking about with Jean Bart. If we just go bow into the overmatch, it's guaranteed to do big hits to us. If we can get him to hit that belt armor, sometimes it'll bounce. Sometimes it won't do those full pens. We get ourselves a double strike, and unfortunately the game ends. I was locked in. I was very disappointed the game ended that quickly because I was having a blast just pushing in there. Secondaries actually shooting at a sub. They can, only on surface though. Periscope depth, your secondaries just will not fire. I hope that's a bug, Wargaming. Please fix that. I think we won so quickly thanks to our Nicholas. My goodness. Fast game and still got 1700 base. That's crazy. And 15,000 damage out of our secondaries in this one. That's okay value. This next game here, I also was playing with the secondary build, but we're going to see a lot less value. Full secondaries, though, we can still get some pretty insane damage out of these main guns. It's a lot of RNG. It's a lot of RNG. You've seen some bad salvos, you've seen some good salvos. What about no accuracy buffs and we still get 20,000 damage into that New York at a pretty far range for tier 6 too. Yeah. It's a lot of RNG, I think, is fair to say. Enemy destroyer behind us, and guess what? That's where our secondary build is at its best. So focus the secondaries on the DD and hold our guns. We're not gonna shoot too early on this Omaha. This time we got him locked bow in, so we'll wait for him to do his turn and then try and take him out. But that secondary accuracy leaves a little bit to be desired, doesn't it? It does not have any improved accuracy. So the DPM, the guns fire reasonably quick, I guess, and have okay damage output, but the accuracy on the secondaries is no good. It doesn't have any improvements like some of the German battleship lines do, or some of those new Pan American battleships that we've seen. It's just standard battleship secondary dispersion. That's why it's not as useful. Omaha takes basically nothing broadside. He's angling. Guess what, guys? He's angling. Guess what's going to happen? I know it's a secondary build. We shouldn't complain too much about dispersion when we're not even buffing it, using the tools Wargaming gives us to buff it. But yeah, why does he take more damage when he's angled than when he's broadside? And we get very lucky. I mean, all skill. I knew those torps were going to run out. Yeah, we got to be careful of the torpedoes. And wow, we take a big hit. I think that was Queen Elizabeth AP. Yeah, that overmatched. Look at that dispersion. Do you think that was going to be a Citadel? So you got to realize that going in, all right? That's the one thing. If you're expecting an accurate battleship, that is not Dunkirk. That is not the ship. You got to go into it assuming it's going to troll you, but then be pleasantly surprised by how these guns can perform. Barely dodging another set of torpedoes here. The speed and maneuverability is quite nice if you're used to some of these lower tier, mid-tier battleships being incredibly slow. Nice to have the extra speed. And I gotta say, the actual pen and shell velocity is very, very nice on this battleship. At, well, let's just say 10 kilometers. You get almost 500 millimeters of pen. That is very, very good for tier 6. And the shell velocity, too, is very, very nice. So you're not having to lead as far. It's a lot easier to lead these guns than a lot of the other tier 6 battleships. I think that's a pretty big value point as well. And the reload being faster, too. Even at base, this ship having a 26-second reload is pretty good for this tier. Of course, we can buff that up a little bit more. But that's something that can help catch people off guard and guarantee a little better salvos in when people aren't used to the reload speed. That's why reload boosters are so good, right? You can guarantee fast reloads when enemies are making mistakes. They might not be expecting it. Also just fast reloads in general, right? Like Republic at tier 10 on the French line has just a base fast reload. So you're going to get better salvos in. People won't be able to maneuver as much in between your salvos. So you should be getting more damage in. Decent game here, certainly with the secondary build, but only 6k, not even 6k from those secondaries, maybe not the best value. This is the build that I would personally run on Dunkirk. It's very, very greedy, but at the end here, it's taking Furious, it's taking Heavy AP, it's taking Adrenaline Rush, it's taking secondary range, only to get the value out of the close quarters combat. I don't know if that's exactly what it's called, but 10% reload when an enemy ship is within secondary range. We can get the gun firing very, very quickly. Submarines on the flank, so we do not want to push into that. We'll turn away. That's your best chance of avoiding submarine torps, by the way. When you're kiting away, they will lose their tracking on you at a certain distance. For battleships, it's actually pretty far. So when you're kiting, you should be able to avoid that incoming damage. Much harder for cruisers and certainly destroyers. That tracking only unlocks at very close range. Battleships have it a little bit easier in that regard, certainly, but still not fun to fight subs, let's be honest, in any class. So we're going to run away. Farragut here is pushing a little bit too aggressively, and Look at that. Getting a little faster reload thanks to Furious, and we do manage to take him out here. Also airstrikes, and there's certainly double carrier games at this tier, so not having the best AA is a certain downside, but at least, again, it's a little more maneuverable. It's a little faster than a lot of tier 6 battleships. So if you're at speed, if you're maneuvering, it's not as bad. It's still no fun, though, right? I'm not going to try and gaslight you into thinking it's fun to fight carriers or subs, but at least with this one, you're quick enough to maybe get away or avoid, hopefully. Prop mod here allowing me to accelerate enough to avoid those torpedoes and just barely not take damage to the submarine. And our DD and submarine go after him. Look at our guys. They got the cap and then we're like, I got you. We're going to go kill this sub for you. I appreciate it, guys. Thank you. It helps a lot to have your teammates go after them like that. And so we got to drop our ASWs. You only get one at a time, but still. It can do okay damage if you can line it up. At these tiers, though, you only get the one bomb per drop, so it's a little bit harder to lead. At higher tier, when you get those 2 bombs, then the box is a little bigger. The area you cover is a little bigger, easier to hit. Although at these tiers, the submarines go a little slower, so shouldn't be as bad. And our shell velocity means the best dispersion part of that salvo hits the island, unfortunately. But now we get into the fun, okay? We got 20,000 damage. Not an amazing start by any stretch, but now we're going to push and make use of all these reload buffs. Just watch how our reload goes while fighting this Dunkirk and Endracht here. If he goes broadside, we should do some alright damage, but more importantly, our guns can reload rather quickly. With just that secondary ship buff, our reload gets down close to 20 seconds already. No Citadel, but 8,000 damage, not bad. And now we get to do some bow tanking. This is where I think Jombard is going to be the most fun. When you're allowed to push in like this and brawl it out with the enemy ships, it's really fun at close range. Double fire and a ship in secondary range means, yeah, that was a 19-second reload, maybe even a little bit less. Adrenaline Rush is slowly ticking up as well. I'm going to let these fires burn, man. This is a greedy build. You'll notice we don't even have fire prevention. Questionable, but it is a greedy build. We got to try it out, and I had a lot of fun with it, to be honest with you. Maybe that reload speed catches this cruiser off guard, so we do manage to take him out. The Citadel, no Dev Strike. He didn't quite have enough HP, but very, very nice to have this level of reload on a ship at tier 6. Dunkirk going to stay angled to us, and this is where we come back to closer to the start of the video. I should just swap to the HE, man. I don't know what I'm doing. 17.9 second reload. Yeah, the fires are going to tick out, so then we lose some DPM. Unfortunate, right? Unlucky. But I should swap to the HE. I don't know why I'm greeting here for the AP. I'm hoping, I guess, that he gets greedy and goes broadside. Maybe even gives enough angle to fire his guns at us. When kiting, the firing angles, of course, on the Dunkirk are not great, especially on one of the turrets. You got to give 32 degrees of angle, and you can actually fire one of them at 25 degrees, 24 degrees, something like that. So I was hoping he would give the angle. Here he did a little bit, but our dispersion wasn't quite enough. Now I'm hoping for fires here, right? Maybe his secondaries can light some fires, because we only have a 20.6 second reload. Yeah, you should be firing a lot more HE. You're gonna see just why once I finally swap. But very, very fun ship to play, I gotta say. For 2,500 doubloons, I gotta say this is a very interesting battleship to have. I don't think it's that overpowered, but it's different, it's fun, and if you're through the battle pass, I think it's worth picking up. Only if you're through the battle pass, though. That's the key. I think buying the battle pass early before you get to the end, who knows what comes up in life. Sometimes you just don't have the time to play and you can't get through to the end. Then it feels like a bit of a waste, doesn't it? At least to me it does. So I would really recommend waiting until you know you actually get to the end of that battle pass. Bad dispersion means, yeah, it gets a double fire. The HE's pretty good in that. I was a little too stubborn while playing this thing. Don't be like me. swallow your pride or your ego trying to go for those Citadel salvos and just shoot the HE van. It is very, very good. And we're going to take out that Dunkirk, 90,000 damage. Pretty quick, getting up close to 100,000 damage in the end of this one. And at long range here against a Scharnhorst, which does have pretty good armor, right? Those German battleships have turtleback, of course, but even relatively thick belt armor. So at longer range, smaller caliber shells, maybe we would shatter even on the belt armor here, or we'd have to hit superstructure, but no. 5 pens. That's pretty good. The pen is very, very nice. The shell velocity in pen, though, does mean against cruisers, if they're broadside, you might find yourself hitting a little too many overpens. You might want to wait until they're angled. No, it's RNG, right? Against those cruisers. Typically, you will be depth striking them when they are broadside. It is a mistake still, and it is still going to do good damage against those broadsides. It's not like you shouldn't be shooting them, but I won't lie, it's a little annoying when you get those overpen salvos. 4 kills into this one, over 100,000 damage, and just this Normandy left. I had fun, man. Not every game was good, though. I am showing you some of the better games. There were some that were a little boring, a little bit snowball, one-sided, and certainly ended a little too quickly. I showed you one of those where the secondaries actually did some decent work, but for the most part, I had a really, really good time playing Dunkirk. I think that might be down to Matchmaker, though, as well. Tier 6 is just less power, I guess, overall than higher tier. There's less insane damage output at long range and accurate at long range. Overmatch, HE spam, all that at high tier is very powerful these days. So it leads to more campy games, less interesting games, and maybe that's why I was enjoying myself playing tier 6 as well. It might not just be Dunkirk. I've had a lot of fun playing some of the other tier 6s. Had some fun doing that with Malta too, playing Mutsu and silly stuff like that. So give mid-tier a go. I consider tier 6 lower tier these days, considering nobody really plays below tier 5 these days anymore, unless you're new to the game and then you're in protected matchmaker. But finding an actual game of players at those lower tiers doesn't really happen. So to me, tier 6 is lower tier. That might be a bit of an elitist thing to say, but it's just kind of how my brain works. And it's a lot of fun, man. It's a lot of fun down here. And decent credit income, too. Perhaps a better way of putting it is it's towards the lowest tiers you can reliably find a game, unless you're in that protected matchmaker queue as a new player. But for experienced players, people who have more games, higher tier ships, you really just can't find games tier 4 and below. So tier 6, tier 5 becomes that low tier game, I suppose. Maybe not the best way of putting it. But anyways, here's the build I was running in that last game. And I had a lot of fun. I mean, 18-second reload, sub 18-second reload when you have a base of 26. That's wild. And that's what close quarters combat with the longer range secondaries gets you a little more often. Adrenaline Rush helping us out as we get lower on HP. And we are going to get lower on HP because we're letting fires burn to let Furious give us DPM. Yeah, it's a bit of a trolley build, but I think it's very fun. Certainly going with Emergency Repair Expert, Conceal, and Fire Prevention is better because it's going to help you stay alive and the ship is still going to perform quite well. That's what I ran at the beginning. Secondary build, probably not as good. I would either run the standard build or something ridiculous like this. The secondaries just aren't quite good enough. I would value the secondary range simply to buff the main gun's reload. As for the upgrades, I like running Propulsion Mod on this one, helping you feel a little more maneuverable. Steering gears would be fine, but I value the ability to accelerate faster from a stop, also do some speed juking or slow speed island play, all that stuff. You do want to do that in a Dunkirk thanks to its gun layout. Aiming systems, of course, because, well, our main guns are what are doing the damage, so that's what we should go for. No full secondary build, even though the secondaries did okay. The secondary build did okay. I think that was more down to RNG on the main guns more than anything. And it's fast. It's reasonably fast. Concealment with this build, not so good, but that's not the end of the world at this tier. And yeah, 26 mil armor everywhere. Pretty rough at tier 6 when a lot of tier 6s and 7s have 380 millimeter guns, which overmatch you everywhere. You take big damage from those guys. So really the only way is to try and bait them into shooting your belt armor here, which is decent, certainly. But if they know what they're doing, they're just going to aim up into your upper belt here, or try and hit your bow when you're just bow on like this. I mean, that's a lot of overmatch that they can go after, or they might even knock out your guns. Which is something you have to worry about with this thing. But a lot of fun to be had here with the Dunkirk. Certainly for 2,500 doubloons, it is a very, very good price. But you have to grind for it still. There's that time component as well. So I'm gonna say it again. I recommend you wait until you know you've finished the battle pass. You've made it to level 20 or whatever it is right now. And only then buy the premium battle pass. That way you're just knowing you're spending your money on the ship guaranteed. You've already put in the time commitment. I wouldn't buy the battle pass early, hoping you get through it, and sometimes you won't. Life happens, man. I get it. So that is the recommendation, but it's a fun little ship to be played at tier 6. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.